Hello, guys. Welcome back to Critical African Thinkers. As you know, this is a place where we examine everything under the microscope of logic to ascertain what is most factual and logically consistent. So today, I want to talk about Glenn Loury. Glenn Loury and John McWhorter and their takes on the just concluded US elections, their takes on Donald Trump. They seem to have a difference of opinion on Donald Trump. And in this conversation, which I saw a snippet of, I couldn't believe what I was hearing from Glenn Loury. I could not even recognize the person that Glenn Loury had become in his defense of Trump, in his defense of the MAGA movement, in his defense of, you know, the right in this instance. And typically with Glenn on many of these issues, but John McWhorter just seemed to be a much more reasonable person in this conversation. So I decided to go through this conversation in this live stream, in this live chat, and give my thoughts as to their position to see how much sense Glenn makes as compared to John McWhorter. So let me just share my screen and we can start the conversation. Yes. Share. Good.
Hello, everybody. This is Glenn Loury. I am with John McWhorter. You are watching The Glenn Show or listening to The Glenn Show. Glenn Loury, Brown University, and the Manhattan Institute, John McWhorter, Columbia University, and the New York Times. We talk every other week. This is our week. Hey, John.
Hi, Glenn. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm just wondering how you are doing. Have you recovered from the election in which much of your vituperation against Trump was refuted by the voters?
I had no idea that it was going to be that landslide, and I have processed it. It is very hard for me to have seen that and to feel good about my country. It's hard. It's really hard because all the things that I've said about him, I still believe and am seeing borne out. But if that many people see him as the better choice, then it's my job to try to put myself in their heads and understand why this happened.
Whoa. I mean, that's a very
Well, it's I don't think it's really your job to put yourself in their position and understand why this happened. It is very, very clear why this happened. And I know people are going to say I'm playing the sexism card, but it is what it is. This happened because a woman ran against Donald Trump. Donald Trump was never going to ever lose to a woman. He didn't lose to a woman the first time. He didn't lose to a woman this time. But he lost to a man who wasn't that strong, who was an old man. Joe Biden was very old, and Trump lost, in his words, bigly to him. So, however we want to try to dissect the US elections, this past elections, to me, it significantly boiled down to one thing. Because if you look at the campaign that Harris ran, it was a very disciplined campaign. It was a campaign that was very centrist. Funny enough, it wasn't a very progressive campaign. Kamala Harris shunned the progressive elements of the Democratic Party. She reclaimed freedom, she reclaimed patriotism, she reclaimed all the typical things, joy, all the typical things that you would associate with right wingers or conservatives. She was just towing a very centrist line, yet she still lost. So there was nothing that she could have done different. She couldn't have run a better campaign. She could not have run a better campaign. So all this, yeah, the reason why she lost because she's a woman. That's it.
significant concession, John.
Well,
I mean, perhaps you could have done that years ago, and you would have been
no, because
more in touch with what's going on in your country.
part of wrapping my head around it, though, frankly, is
So is Glenn suggesting that just because the majority of the country thinks in a particular way, then that way of thinking is correct, is right? Just because the majority of the people have decided to vote in Trump, does that in a way legitimizes Trump's character or his policies or his person? No. And I'm with John on this one. You have to stick your grounds. You have to. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't change anything. It's just people's choices, and the choice could have gone either way. And the people have decided this time to put Trump back in office. So that is not a. It's not an endorsement of Trump's person. It's not an endorsement of the superiority of his ideas, of his policy ideas, which we didn't even really see. Trump's rallies were just a repetition of the same old things over and over. They were tired, they were belabored, they were over and over again. There was no spark, but yet he won.
Remembering that most human beings don't follow, quote unquote, the news closely. And I completely understand that. I completely understand it. I'm not a political junkie myself, as I'm sure shows sometimes. So if you vote on the basis of your groceries, I can't look down on that if you've got other stuff to do and it was really just about inflation. If you have a major issue with the broken immigration system and that's your main point, that's not part of my life, despite the fact that I live among immigrants. But if that's your main issue, I get it. I get having a wedge issue.
What do you feel in your body when you hear the term white people?
That doesn't account for all of the population, but to be honest, I think it counts for most of it. And I'm not pulling some H.L. Mencken and saying that everybody is a boob. That's not what I mean. It's just that if you're not that into who's going to be picked as attorney general and things like that, I get that Trump is a great stand-up comedian, for one, and that if he says he's going to fix inflation, if you only have so much attention to pay, you figure, well, that maybe he's a clown, but he'll do it. I get it.
Why is he running for, or was he running for clown of the year? Why is it even a plus to him that he's a comedian, that he has this? Okay.
I can't hate America for that. For those who pay more attention, it is harder for me. It's about priorities. And I wrote a Times piece about this. How do you rank things? If you vote for Trump, it doesn't mean you're a racist. It just means that you rank racism lower than you rank other things. And I, of all people, understand that. I think America gets too hung up on, quote unquote, systemic racism in particular. So that's where I am on it. But I had to work hard the next day not to think, what country am I in? But it's counterintuitive that the whole...
if you voted Trump, you probably might not be a racist, but you're probably a moron, because all the signs were there, all the policies were there, everything was there for you to make a choice between an obviously better candidate and Trump, and you decided to go for Trump. So yeah, you might not be a racist, but you might be a moron.
Country would be crazy or racist or sexist or anything like that. So I had to think, okay, how can I make my peace with this? And I pretty much have.
I hear no criticism of the losing party, the Democrats, the candidate, the establishment that stood behind the candidate, the attitudes. I mean, the out of touch coastal elites who arrogantly thought they could lecture the rest of the country about what was right and wrong on some of the issues that you've mentioned, immigration, for example. Paul Krugman, I think of, just offhand, lecturing from your newspaper, the New York Times, the country, to the effect of, oh, inflation really isn't nearly as bad as people think it is. Oh, the economy really is doing much better than the pollsters tell us that people think it is, and so on. Is there any sense of remorse or criticism of your class? Again.
But what is there to criticize? Why is it necessary? Why is it necessary to... This man just said, he just gave his piece, he just gave his mind on this issue. Why is it necessary to criticize the other side? There was a lot of criticism for the other side, even coming from Glenn. And Glenn talking about being out of touch. Glenn is the one who is out of touch. He's the one that is clearly out of touch. When the Democrats said that inflation wasn't as bad, or that the US economy is not as bad as it's made out to be, they were right. Coming out of COVID, the world is suffering from inflation right now, and I think the US has done better than most other parts of the world. So what were they expecting? Like some miracle that COVID wasn't going to have any impact on the long run, that things were just going to go back to normal completely? Wasn't unemployment down? Inflation is a global thing right now, and the US seems to be doing better off than many other countries. So it means that the Joe Biden administration actually did something. But somehow stating that fact is being out of touch. No, people who don't want to, they don't want to, people who want to see or believe whatever they want to believe. You think the economy is worse, it probably is worse for you because that's the worldview, that's your framing, that's the way you want to see things. But facts don't care about your feelings, as they like to say, which they don't believe anyway. Facts don't care about your feelings.
This is a position that I identify you with there, sitting there in New York City.
I'm going to make people mad again. No, frankly, I have tried to look as closely as I can at the extent to which hyper wokeness and trans issues and a sense of Democrats as lecturing people they consider beneath them swayed the election. And from what I've seen, not meaningfully. I honestly think that the idea that Democrats looked down on the woman running the liquor store in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, that I'm always talking about, and that she voted for Trump because she felt like he likes her, that is something we talk about more than that woman running the liquor store is thinking about. And polling,
Exactly.
exit polling seemed to show it. It was inflation, it was immigration, and it was that Trump seems real, which is, what you might be thinking when you're trying to run a liquor store and you have kids. I really don't think that the Democrats did anything wrong, except I think obviously Biden should have dropped out earlier, but how could he have? What human being, what King Lear sees himself tottering a little bit and steps aside? I think that's a lot to ask of someone. And you can't feel how he's inside of himself and he's in a little bit of denial. I'm 59 and I can see that coming. So that wasn't going to happen. Now, anointing Kamala Harris, that was unideal. However, I think that she had her message out very clearly, what she wanted to do for working and struggling people. She said it over and over again, but she didn't have the charisma that the stand-up comedian had. She stumbled a little.
I don't understand what charisma has to do with this. Anyway, it's US politics and it's always about optics, so maybe charisma has something to do with it. But Kamala Harris wasn't totally without charisma. I mean, look at the debate. She totally dominated Donald Trump in that debate. Trump was like a fish out of water. So, I don't know. Yeah, I've seen Stanley's comment about the immigration. I think the immigration thing was one big factor as well. I also thought that they didn't handle it very well, the immigration thing. So yeah, that may have contributed. But barring that, I still would find it very difficult to believe that Harris would have won against Trump. There wasn't any immigration issue as such in 2016 against Hillary Clinton, and she still lost to someone who's never been in politics, someone who did not have any political, there was no political career, no experience, nothing whatsoever. He came in and he won against the woman. So as much as people want to make it about other things, I still think that the sexism is a very big part of why she lost. And you could even see that with African American communities. The level of vitriol and attack that Kamala Harris endured from Black people was, in my mind, unprecedented. I really did not understand where that was coming from. It was too much. Maybe some people couldn't just stand having a woman as a president.
At the beginning, but she wasn't opaque by the
Stand-up
end.
comedian.
He's great at
The
it.
stand-up comedian.
He's not even that great a comedian. He's not even that funny anymore. I mean, Trump's insults were funny in 2016, but they are overused now that they are not even funny. They're just stale. They're just there. There's nothing exciting. He hasn't come up with any name that sticks, any names that stings for any of his political opponents since 2020. 2016, Trump was on fire. I mean, I could really see that fire. It was something new, it was something fresh. But mm, come on, it wasn't that funny.
So you're in a serious denial situation here, it seems to me. The stand-up comedian has views. He has views about global affairs. He has views about the national economy. He has views about the government and how it's going to be run.
Any fool can have a view about anything. It doesn't make their view substantive. It doesn't, it doesn't give any weight to it. Any idiot can have a view on anything. So what? Trump has views on immigration, he has views on foreign affairs, he has views on the economy. So what? You've got to ask yourself, it's not about having views, but do those views make sense? That's what you should be talking about. But just stating that he has views on this, so what? Everybody has a view on, they say that opinions are like assholes. Everyone has them, but apparently some people don't wash very well, so they are stink, just like Trump's.
He has views which will be reflected in the personnel that he puts in positions of power and influence going forward. The stand-up comedian actually
see what he's doing with those appointments is just appointing his cronies, most of which are media celebrities. That's what he's doing.
Political phenomenon, and you're in, it seems to me, serious denial to the extent that you refuse to acknowledge and try to understand what that political phenomenon is. Make America great again is not.
So, what's very interesting about right wingers is that, yeah, of course, Glenn Loury is a right winger, even though he would not want to admit it, is that they very, very slowly begin to co-opt leftist language, denialism. You're denying things like words like climate denialism, or you're a climate denier, you're a this denier, and all that. Those are typical leftist words, but you see right wingers using them now because somehow over time right wingers come to a conclusion that left wingers have come to 20 years ago. They're very slow to come to the realization of anything. They never push for anything. They are never at the forefront of anything new, anything innovative, especially in culture, but they come to accept and adopt it 20 years down the line. I mean, look at all the woke stuff. Right wingers are like woke now. The cancel culture stuff that they were bitching about prior, they are the ones now involved in the cancel culture. The misery that they used to accuse leftists of being miserable, they are the ones that are miserable now. Even after winning the election, they are still miserable and bitching on X, especially Elon Musk. So you just see this trend where leftists set a pace for something, Republicans or conservatives or right wingers complain about it, only to adopt it a few years down the line. It's just crazy.
Now, the governing mantra of the party that controls not just the presidency, not just the Supreme Court, but both houses of Congress, of the party that won a landslide election in your country. Man.
So what is ClickUp? ClickUp is an all-in-one productivity software where you can manage everything and anything related.
Wake up.
I think it's a good thing that Republicans have almost full control of the US government now, so that when things go to shit, you know exactly who to blame. I mean, I don't think Trump should be saved from himself. He should be given free rein to wreak as much havoc as he wants to wreak, so that when he's kicked out of the White House this time, when he's impeached again and removed, everybody understands very clearly why. So let him be that bull in the china shop. Let him break some things. And then people realize how dangerous it is for you to put a madman back in the White House. But if people are going to guard him and block him here and there, it might make his administration seem sane on the long run. Let it show for what it truly is. All the crazies that he wants to appoint, let him appoint them. And when they make a shit show, then people will begin to actually see and say, no, this was a terrible mistake.
MAGA is a hysterical, mean-spirited, anti-empirical, little 14-year-old boy wearing axe fantasy.
Exactly. True. I couldn't have put it in a better form. And Glenn Loury sitting there happens to be MAGA. He will deny it, but he is MAGA, and I can bet you that he voted for Trump. I can bet you he voted for Trump.
It has nothing to do with any kind of reality, the vision of America that man puts forward. And his views consist of, honestly, somebody who thinks he's playing a game of Risk rather than dealing with the real world. I mean, the old Milton Bradley, or maybe it was Parker Brothers game. And as for this deep state business, his views are all about that. This deep state that doesn't exist, which is really just people who don't like him that he wants to get back at. That's all he is. And I'm sorry, that is what I believe. I'm not being reductive. And I do see his main talent, because he isn't a good businessman. His main talent is that he is great at the podium, which I have written honestly, I think in an Atlantic piece back in 2016 or 17. That's the only thing in which he's competent. And it made a big difference.
He's driving the police.
Yeah, he's a big bullshitter. He knows how to bullshit and sell his bullshit, and people just buy his bullshit. And I think John is spot on here. I think it's correct. But you can see that Glenn is going to bring in some lame-ass excuses.
Political conversation in your country, John. Well, he's competent at that.
So what? He's driving political conversation. So what? Terrible leaders drive political conversations. The driving of political conversation in itself is not what is substantive. What does it lead to? That's what's substantive. Of course, someone who is chaotic is going to drive political conversation. Does that make it okay? Does that make it good?
He's competent at winning an election by a large margin. He's competent at that. He's competent at taking over a major Republican party and reshaping and redefining it. He's certainly capable of doing that.
He's capable in
He's
the way
back from the dead, man. Again, I repeat. I mean, if it feels good, do it.
So this is just Glenn Loury being in his feelings. No, there is no analysis behind this. It's just, because Trump triumphed, there must be something special about him. Because Trump won, there must be something special about him. Yeah. So this is just the politics of feelings. That's what he's doing. There is no insight, there is no analysis behind what Glenn is saying. Nothing.
Do stuff that feels good all the time, even though it perhaps isn't good for me or doesn't make any sense. If it feels good, if that's what you need to do to get through this, all right, my man, I'm with you. Go ahead in your delusion. But it's delusional. It's disconnected from reality.
No,
what exactly is delusional? What is disconnected from reality? That's his opinion. That's his point. Why does he have to agree with you for it to be reality? If there's anyone who's delusional here, it's Glenn Loury.
Trump is probably the most important political figure in the last half century in American politics.
You know, in secondary school, we used to learn about the economic importance of pests. Talk about the economic importance of bean weevils, of locusts, of grasshoppers, and all those things. When, on a literal sense, when you look at that term, economic importance, you think it's something positive. But no, those things were pests that were wreaking havoc. So they were of economic importance because they led to economic loss. So when you say, is the most important political figure, in what sense? In a negative sense. So yes, something that's negative can be important. I mean, Hitler was a pretty important guy in his time, but you see the havoc he wreaked on the world. So importance is not something substantive in and of itself. Importance for what? To what end? To what goal?
The most important virus of the 2020s. Yeah, he's a virus. He's competent. It's funny, I just got finished interviewing Richard Dawkins in Dublin, so I'm thinking about things.
I want to hear.
Damn, let me take that a bit back. I think John is just on fire here, man.
Doesn't make any sense. If it feels good, if that's what you need to do to get through this, All right, my man, I'm with you. Go ahead in your delusion. But it's delusional. It's disconnected from reality.
No, this is not
Trump is probably the most important political figure in the last half century in American politics.
Was the most important virus of the 2020s.
Exactly. COVID was the most important virus of 2020s, and it killed a lot of people. So we're going to say COVID good because it was important.
He's a virus. He's competent. It's funny. I just got finished interviewing Richard Dawkins in Dublin, and so I'm thinking about things.
I want to hear about that.
He's competent like a virus. It's not something that he sits and plans carefully. It's all about, there are people who don't like me and I'm going to get them. And if you feel that way and you happen by chance to have a stand-up competence, you might change the Republican Party. He's a virus.
For posterity's sake. I will revisit it often in the future.
But you know something, Glenn shouldn't be laughing so much, because remember how he ate his words when Trump lost in 2020. How he was saying, I was wrong about Trump. I was wrong. I'm sorry that I didn't see how dangerous this guy was post January 6th. But now he's flipping the script and saying, this is just nonsensical. So just watch it, because you might come up again in a few years' time to say, I was wrong about Trump. I was wrong about Trump. So be very careful.
So Glenn, how do you feel?
I feel a certain excitement, to be honest with you, a certain sense of anticipation. Yeah, I think something really important is happening.
Of what?
Of the reshaping of the political landscape, of the perhaps
Reshaping of the political landscape to what?
Emergence of a working class center right governing majority, working class oriented center right governing majority in the country, of the defenestration of Nancy Pelosi.
Is he going to say the deep state? Glenn Loury believes conspiracy theories now. Huh.
You mean the condescension?
Pardon?
Are you talking about this Democrat condescension or something else?
I'm not just Democrat of coastal elite, smug, woke. You know, as I said here when we talked about this briefly before, I think the whole conversation on race, diversity, and justice looks differently. I don't think a summer of 2020 sparked by the George Floyds and the Jacob Blakes and so forth of the world would go down nearly the same way going forward. I think the war in Ukraine is going to look a lot different going forward.
Yeah, it's going to look a lot different because Putin is basically going to have his way. Trump is going to let him have his way. They're just going to pawn off Ukraine to Putin to do whatever he wants to. But hopefully that doesn't happen.
I think Republican tinged domestic policy on questions like taxes and so on, the immigration issue is going to look very different and so on. I'm actually thinking.
Tell me, Glenn, what do you think about Trump's tariff and trade war with China that he's going to be? You're an economist. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. How well do you think that's going to bode for the economy? How well do you think that's going to bode for the economy? I want to hear that.
That my country is moving in the right direction with this move. I'm happy to see the Republicans in control of Congress. We'll see. We'll see what they make of it. They can mess it up, sure, but we'll see. In any case, what did you get out of the last 4 years with Joseph Biden and Kamala Harris? What are you proud of that they accomplished?
Don't skip the opportunity to study abroad. With the Duolingo English test, we can make this process.
Biden did all sorts of unexciting but very important things
Exactly.
for the good of the nation in terms of, preparing to take care of our infrastructure, for example. There was a minor Great Society that was beginning to happen under Biden that they didn't.
I mean, the recovery from COVID, why is no one saying anything about the recovery from COVID? Why is no one saying how Joe Biden was able to make that recovery happen? How unemployment was way down as well. Why does it have to be chaotic for you to say someone has done something? Why does the presidency have to be chaotic before? At times, the status quo, maintaining a very low tempo, is actually good. Maintaining things is good than this dangerous upheaval that you want to do with Trump.
Market well enough, and or it would never seem as dramatic as pretending that we need to make the country great again by deporting tens of thousands of people.
You've heard me talk about Ground News. It's the website and app that I use every day to cut through the news and find the truth. They gather articles from
It's like out in the street. And I'm going to ask you.
Yeah.
And I'm asking you this with complete respect, not to mention awe, but still. What you just said about being excited that Republicans, these Republicans, it's not Nelson Rockefeller, these Republicans are going to be, it's not even George W. Bush. These Republicans are going to be running the country for the next 4 years, and you're excited. I have to be careful how I ask this, but I really think it's constructive. Are you saying that because you truly believe it? Or are you saying it because it's important to be a contrarian? And maybe even, if I may, Glenn, because you're telling me that I'm saying these things because it feels good, my things, maybe because it feels good to be a contrarian.
That's a very, very important and very interesting question that John asked. Very, quite incisive. Let's see how Glenn answers it.
It's a genuine question.
I don't take offense at the question. It's fair enough.
I'm glad.
And I am aware of my tendency to rush to the contrarian stance because, quote unquote, it feels good. But I've had it up to here with the Democrats. The Democratic Party is not my party, not by a long shot. You know what I thought about Obama? Kamala Harris as the candidate, she was an empty suit, in my opinion. She was a DEI vice president appointed by Biden who promised the country he was going to make a black, and then elevated to the position of his replacement candidate by the force of the argument that you can't do that to a black.
Bullshit. Bullshit. Let's suppose Kamala Harris is a DEI candidate. Does that make her unqualified? Does DEI automatically mean unqualified? And this nonsense. I mean, Glenn should be smart enough to understand that this thing he's saying is rubbish. Joe Biden says, I'm going to pick a black woman as my running mate. So by that statement, does it mean that he wasn't even going to consider whether that black woman is competent or not? And this was a former prosecutor. This is someone who has a career, who's had a career. It's not like she hasn't achieved anything in her life and she was just picked. It's like, it's not as if she hasn't achieved anything and you're telling me she's, so what if she's a DEI hire? Does DEI mean incompetent? I mean, look at the mess that Trump is doing right now. Look at the people he's selecting. So if DEI is the word that you use to refer to when incompetent black people are being employed, what word do you refer to when incompetent white people are being employed? Or it's never the case that incompetent white people would be employed. There are so many reasons why people get what they get, and not all the time it has to do with 100% competence. At times it has to do with who you know. Currently, those who Trump is appointing is based on loyalty. It's not based on competence. It's based on who you know. So why is DEI worse than someone getting a position because of who they know, or because of the social circles they run with or they run in? So this is nonsense talk by Glenn Loury. And he's going to be performative with his outrage. DEI, this. You yourself admitted that you were a DEI candidate when you were admitted into the university, even though you never needed it. You admitted it.
Woman, since she's the natural person standing in line, and etc. I don't know where she came from. I resented her being foisted on us. I resented being lectured. I identify with the people.
Glenn resenting being lectured when he continuously lectures, especially black people. There is no clip of Glenn Loury that you find on the internet where he's not lecturing, where he's not pontificating, when he's not being morally outraged. And he complains about being lectured. Come on, get serious, my guy.
The populist spirit that this insurgency, and that's what it is, in my opinion, it's a political insurgency. It's broadly gauged. It's a lot of people, not the tiki torch burning, pointy hat wearing racist or whatever, and not the idiots and incompetents that you seem to want to trumpet. This is a broadly based grassroots insurgency of people who are tired with a certain kind of complacent, entitled presumption that the Obamas personified. Did you hear those speeches that they gave during the campaign?
Can you hear your speech every time? Talk about pots calling the kettle black. Can you hear your speech?
Those people have been sent packing, and I'm glad they've been sent packing. And I am viewing with a cautious anticipation, the dawning of a new era in American politics. That's a good thing. It's Reagan-esque. Morning in America.
It's never a good thing to be this simple. It's never a good thing to be. I don't want to use the stupid word for Glenn Loury, but this is just nonsense.
America 1980 2.0. And let's see what happens. But the ground is now fertile for something different to emerge. And I'm excited at the prospect that we're going to get a different kind of leadership and a different set of leaders, a governing class. I like J.D. Vance. I like him. He's the heir apparent. He's who you're going to have to face off against in 2028.
He won't win.
You like him? Why? Why do you like him? What makes J.D. Vance qualified? What makes him any more qualified than Kamala Harris? What makes him any more qualified than Kamala Harris?
Did you see the Democrats?
Please let me join your guild. I want to be a part of a team.
Yeah.
Who are you going to put up against Gretchen Whitmer?
There has to be
Gavin Newsom?
No, it would have to be somebody who comes out of nowhere like Obama did. And that's a challenge. There could be a Republican who had
Of course, it depends on what happens in the next 4 years. If you get a repeat of the Biden fiasco, no, it won't be so good for him. If you get Morning in America 2.0, different story altogether.
I mean, yeah, you have a...
Are you hoping he fails?
What?
Let me ask you a question. Are you hoping that the president of the United States and his government fails so that you can say, I told you so?
Well, I'm not hoping he fails so say I told you so. I'm hoping he fails so that people learn a lesson. Yeah, so that people learn a lesson. I mean, you can't keep doing, because if there's no lesson learned, then it gives off the idea that something as crazy as this becomes the norm, and probably when it all comes crashing down, the impact will be much worse than it is. So yeah, I'm hoping he fails, and the reason I'm hoping he fails is that so that people learn and they kick him out before the 4 years is over.
Fail.
Drive inflation through the roof, bankrupt the government, start wars that you can't finish.
This would not make me feel good because it's not a TV show, it's our actual lives. But
precisely,
if it were a catastrophe, like let's say that the tariffs, if laid down rather transparently, make eggs cost a whole lot more than they cost now.
By the way, I hope the tariffs do not get through Congress.
What do I know? Yeah, me too. No, it wouldn't be.
I think they're a very bad idea. I'm not signing on to everything that you know.
Right. I know I would expect, but no. If it were a complete disaster, it might teach. Now you're going to think I'm being this condescending person standing in front of the Capitol making some modern Democrat Obama speech, but it might teach the populace to be a little more careful in who you vote for and to listen a little more closely to what they say they're going to do and how it.
And I think that lesson needs to be learned. It's a harsh lesson, but it needs to be learned.
Might affect you. Yeah, I would think that, but I'm not wishing that because it would hurt them more than it would hurt me. You know, if inflation happens, I'm in a position where unless we're talking about Weimar Germany, I'm fine. But these are people who would really be suffering. I don't want that to happen. You know, I mean, Glenn, you're right that.
But
Kamala Harris,
you know what? Ignorance has a price. Ignorance has a price. If those people, those not too well off people who voted Trump, get into a bad financial situation because of Trump's policies, well, that's the price of being ignorant.
You know, got dragged into something. Yes, it was DEI that made her the vice president at all. I never liked watching her standing there with her husband smiling with the Bidens back in the beginning. You know, I was thinking, why her? What's going on? And she had some.
Why not her?
Good moments out there, but she has limited charisma.
she had a fantastic run with her campaign. The few months she ran that campaign, I don't think I've ever seen a much more disciplined campaign than Harris did in that few months. She did not lean into the progressive worldview, or she didn't lean into sexism. She didn't lean into racism. She didn't play any of those things. She was a very disciplined, and she seemed to have surrounded herself with very competent people. Why does politics have to be entertaining for it to make sense in the US? Why does it have to be entertaining? Why is it necessary that she has charisma? My God, these are the same people that talk about competence. These are the same people that always, well, test scores. When Harvard was saying that we're considering personality, we're considering other things in terms of our admissions processes, these guys were screaming that no, it must be competence, only simply competence. Now, for something that has much more impact in the lives of people, as being president, you think competence is not enough anymore. Now the person has to be charismatic, it has to have personality. Can't you see the double standard? For one set of things, you think it should just be purely ones and zeros, test scores. For another thing that has much more importance, you think that, oh, now personality matters. Now charm, charisma, all those other things, those other extracurricular things, they now matter. No longer pure competence.
Of the kind that makes things happen in our modern era where so much is about social media. And if you think about it, a Harris presidency, how much was really going to happen? How much was she going to make happen on the basis of connections and people power and carrying a sense of significance about her? Even less than Obama. It would have been kind of a caretaker presidency. She may not have won again. I think that's safe to say. Like the Reagan presidency, and I was, no fan, but, just off of the book whose author, I gave the wrong author when I talked about it. It wasn't George Will, it was Max Boot. I don't know why I mixed up those two people. But there was a Reagan presidency for 8 years. You have to, there was a mood he created. There was a sense of forward motion. He had something. Kamala Harris would never have had that. So yes, this is all going to be more interesting, but I'm sorry. I do believe that President Trump is a complete idiot. Reagan was not.
I agree. He's a complete idiot. A complete idiot. And even much more of an idiot is Elon Musk.
He was no professor, but he did the work. This guy doesn't.
This idiot pulled off an virtually unprecedented comeback from the political graveyard. This idiot actually won a landslide election that practically nobody saw coming. This idiot took control of a major public political party and has reshaped it in its own image. This idiot is probably setting the stage for the next decade or more.
Like Forrest Gump. Is like Forrest Gump
of American public life.
The Robert D'Angelo one.
She didn't know who he was.
And what's your name?
I'm Matt.
He's so successful. He's, if he's so stupid, how can he be so successful?
I mean, if he's so unsuccessful, how could he be that brilliant? If you look at someone like Nikola Tesla, who was a genius, total failure, economic failure or whatever. If he's so brilliant, why was he unsuccessful? Why is success the measure of intelligence or brilliance? Why is that the measure? Of all the very bright minds that we've had in existence, how many of them were that quote unquote successful during their lifetimes? How many of them? If this is the metric of what it means, because a lot of people will look at Elon Musk and say the proof that this man is a genius is because he's the richest man in the world. They're like, people like Isaac Newton, people like Albert Einstein were not the richest men in their days. So that success itself, it's not proof that someone is brilliant. There are so many other factors, and I think one of the strongest factor that contributes to success for people, especially business people, is psychopathy. These people are pure they are sociopaths. So they are able to make certain decisions that a normal functioning human being wouldn't want to do. They are able to take certain risks. Success and business is about risk taking and just being able to stick it to anyone without remorse. So it's not brilliance as much as it is something much more darker and sinister.
Was an accident because he has unique charisma in the era of social media.
That's delusional. With respect,
talk about black swans. If by chance his idiocy and charisma boils down to some good things.
In a way, I think even Glenn himself knows that what he's saying is nonsense, because you can see the way you can see the way he's acting. I know he's processing in his head that what he's saying is utter rubbish, but he must perform. He must dance for his audience.
Getting done, including good things getting done for the suffering working class. And if the result of all this mainly is that we have this rainbow working class, quote unquote, coalition, yeah, I get that.
Now you're talking. That's one of the things that I'm excited may come to pass.
Mm-hmm. And I also liked seeing so many Black and Latino people voting for him, despite the fact that it's rather clear that he wouldn't like them very much. I found that intelligent. That's good. That's the way things should go. You do not withdraw your vote from somebody because, oh, he's a racist. I agree with you about that sort of thing. That's not how human affairs works. That's not how voting in a diverse society works.
Sorry, if you are a racist, I shouldn't be voting for you. I mean, sorry, I'm not going to agree to that point. Nope. Character matters. Things like racism and sexism, they matter, irrespective of your other qualities or what are they. Because what he's saying is what the kind of message that is passing is that racism is okay, it can be rewarded even for people that you're racist against, but it shouldn't be accepted. So no.
That so many Black people in particular are past that kind of Puritanism, that I liked. So there's something that I'm not agape about.
Well, so something we can agree about.
Yeah.
All right, tell us about Ireland. You know, John and I often talk counsel,
which sums up his work.
All right, so I think that's about it for this conversation that they had about Trump and the election. And maybe if anyone wants to chat for a few minutes, let me just put the link. And Stanley, free zone, if you want to come in and let's just talk quickly and briefly before I end the stream. Tell me what you think about Glenn Loury and his insane takes on Trump. And this kind of gives me the vibe that I see with many right-wingers on Putin. Why they are so enamored by Putin, why they think Putin is the good guy. In what world is, and they keep accusing Ukraine of being at the wrong, and I'm like, Ukraine was the one who was invaded. How can they be wrong here? You can see Tucker Carlson and so many other morons, complaining about Putin being. Anyway, Stanley, how are you doing? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing pretty good. You hit some points here.
Yeah, it's sad to see Glenn Loury devolve into this, this, if you want to say, simpleton, because for someone that old and that experienced to be thinking in this manner I can't really understand it. I can't wrap my head around it. What do you think?
Well, I mean, if you go back and, you and I both have been, watching these two for years, they are literally bad at American politics, and not like, they should be good at it, but they're both one note. McWhorter gets it kind of right that it is a weird statement to call Black people intelligent for voting for someone who, I'm not even going to say Trump is a racist, but he doesn't mind if his supporters are racist.
Yeah.
And McWhorter, that statement just in and of itself says volumes. And Glenn, he's so partisan, I've stopped expecting him to be objective.
Yeah, but he likes to pretend that he's not partisan. He likes to pretend that he's objective. I mean, and that's what just pisses me off. I don't like. That was partly why I made that statement on Substack that centrists are just closeted right wingers. I mean, take a
Well,
position
Glenn
and stick with
Loury
it.
is not a centrist.
Yeah, he's not a centrist, but he poses for some things like he's a centrist. For example, he will tell you that I'm not a Republican. He'll tell you he's not a Republican. He would say
Oh,
that
Charles.
I'm not going to say who I'm going to vote for. I'm not saying I'm going to vote for Trump. He knows he's going to vote for Trump. He
Charles,
knows he's a Republican.
I don't know how many people I run into. I've been co-hosting a show, and of course, it's mostly black uh, conservatives, and fuck, none of them are Republicans. None of them are MAGA. No one wants to admit to it because they want to pretend that they're independent and they can, hey, I'm going to pick the best guy. They're fooling themselves.
Exactly.
No, I haven't met anyone on this channel. Not your channel though. It's John Galt, and actually, OKA's been there at least in the chat a few times. I'll put the channel information in the back in the I'll DM you that stuff.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
worth checking out because we get knee deep in politics sometimes. But bottom line is, I just wish people would stop pretending that they're not Republican or they're not conservative. Trump is just the best person. And I will actually say that I actually hope Trump is successful. The mandate stuff, I would go with the word mandate. I will not accept landslide. There is no landslide. Trump only won, by less than 2% of the popular vote. I can argue a mandate because all three branches of government are Republican controlled, and now they have to govern. Okay, they cannot use Democrats, other than the
Exactly.
filibuster in the Senate. They got to govern now. And I'm going to sit back. Trump is not doing an auspicious beginning with some of his picks. And you make a point about DEI. How is what he's doing not DEI?
Exactly.
So,
I mean, that Glenn doesn't get this. That Glenn doesn't get that DI doesn't equal incompetence is so baffling to me. When he himself has admitted that when he got admitted into was it Harvard, that it was was an affirmative action
oh yeah, both
position.
of them. Now, Glenn,
Even
not
though
so much but McWhorter,
he said that. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I was going to say, you talked about McWhorter, and both of them have admitted to, being affirmative action babies, though I think Glenn probably would have been okay without it. So, I don't know. We need to, DEI is problematic, but not in the ways that they're talking about it today.
Yep. I agree to that. I mean,
And your point, comparing Kamala as vice president, credential-wise, to J.D. Vance is spot on. He has no more experience than she. As a matter of fact, he has almost the same credentials. You might argue that Yale is more prestigious a law school than I can't remember whether she went to University of San Francisco or Berkeley, But I mean, she's got elite credentials.
Yeah, but those credentials don't even speak to competence themselves
Correct.
itself. I mean, the school you went to doesn't speak to how competent you are.
Well,
So how
it can correlate. I'll argue that.
it can correlate, but not necessarily true. It's not.
Yeah, it's not a
I don't think
prediction.
I don't think I would consider it as a very important factor. I'd want to see what you've done or what you can do, and look at this person's
Well,
career.
Kamala's
Really,
actually held like, attorney general, district attorney. Um, Vance has only done 2 years in the Senate.
exactly. So if you want to put them side by side, you want to compare what they've done in their career, what they've achieved, it's not even comparable. But somehow he thinks that JD Vance is the future, and somehow he thinks Kamala Harris is.
In a way, I agree that he is the future of MAGA. And that's a whole different conversation. I don't. I agree that he is the future of MAGA. And I have a whole argument about their type of populism, but again, it's another show.
Yeah, so even if he's the future of MAGA, Glenn seems excited by that fact. Like it's actually a good candidate to be the future for MAGA, where as opposed to Kamala Harris, it wouldn't be a good thing for her to be the future of the Democratic Party. That's where my contention is coming in.
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you, and again, it's kind of another show. But I had an argument the other day, with a bunch of colleagues, they're Black conservative colleagues, and it was I don't know. Did you see the Ann Coulter interview with Vivek Ramaswamy?
Yeah, I
Where she
did.
basically said, "Okay, you know what? She is a dinosaur." And Vivek, and I don't, I would probably never vote for him, but not because he's an Indian. I just don't like his politics. But what her WASP colleagues don't understand is they are failing, Asians, South Asians, and I guess, some East Asians, they are outperforming, quote, white people in their own meritocracy. And I pissed off some Black conservatives when I told them, you know what, I didn't raise my son, to compete with white people. I raised him to compete with Asians. They're way smarter. Oh, that got a huge round of applause. And you know me, I'm prone to say something like that, but hell, Asians are outperforming.
Yeah.
So if you're raising your kids to compete to a white standard, kind of like no, you better be like disciplining your kids to reach a standard, and I think there will be an Asian president, probably sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be Vivek. Vivek is just so phony. I mean, if phony was a human being, it would be Vivek. Is guy gives me the creeps, like Elon Musk as well. Anyway, I think this would be a good place to draw this show to a close. Thank you so much, Stanley, for coming. Thank you, Douglas, and every other person that came to the
And
show. I'll catch you guys.
Lose a buddy.
Lou. Yeah, Lou. Welcome, Lou. Thanks for showing up. I'll catch you guys in another live stream.
All right, Charles. Take it easy.
Bye for now. Yeah, you too.